reason for this is when you adopt a comprehensive plan, a lot of things can change within a 5-year period and before each amendment. And so as you consider a proposal and bear it on the goals and policies, it may be different than that future land use map, and then you would address it on each following amendment and then just modify that map and adjust it accordingly. So this is once again the plan, and we looked at this as how is this proposal and how does it link up with the proposed adjoining uses, and when we're looking at the goals and policies and the tenants within that, take it into context of what the plan is. And so that's where we have the special use permit here at this location, the CCS, which potentially could offer some neighborhood commercial within walking distance of some residents. The transportation corridors could link up pedestrians to the commercial shopping. So you start looking at a little bit more like what story is being created or being told at this point in time. Also, we looked at the Title 1816.10 and looking at the establishment of zoning districts, and we broke it out. These next 4 slides breaks out the code and kind of discusses this element within Title 18. And that zoning is assigned considering the following: street classification, traffic patterns, the existing development, future land uses, the community plans, the geography and natural features. For the streets classifications and traffic patterns, the proposed development, the current street plan would facilitate it. It would be compatible with the future land uses of that as well as the existing built environment. But in regards to community plans, there is no real specific community plan for this area. It's not like the city center plan or the Highway 41 corridor plan where we have a master plan for this area. Nor is there any geographic or natural features worth mentioning for this consideration. Commercial and high density residential is typically assigned along streets with higher road classification. There is some multifamily being proposed within this project along the higher road classification as well as some commercial. As I mentioned, there may be pockets of some neighborhood commercial that could be developed within that commercial zoning. And then with the high visibility, it tends to draw more of a commercial interest with that visibility as far as price points and interested parties in development rather than industrial. Limited or neighborhood commercial and low density residential is typically assigned to properties that proceed farther away from the higher intensity urban activities. And looking at this, there is some single family homes pre-existing, and so what they're proposing is additional single family homes adjacent to that, as well as a transitioning of commercial to I-90. Industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning. And looking at this, there is obviously the transportation network that would support industrial development. But industrial development, once it develops and is adjacent to single-family homes, oftentimes have a deterring effect on that single-family neighborhood that buffers alone just can't mitigate. The buffer requirement that you have within a site plan is about 25 feet, and there's tree planting specs, but that 25 feet doesn't mitigate shipping or clanking of equipment or manufacturing of goods, potentially 24/7. The additional rooftops, the purpose of this slide is recently with the Highway 41 corridor master plan and update and looking at the transportation planning with the KMPO, they were trying to get a grasp of what the future, based on historical growth, what the future demand for rooftops are going to be. And so I worked on an exercise with them, and predominantly most of the units went up Highway 41 or North Central, Post Falls, and these undeveloped areas at this point in time. But there was a shortfall where these people would end up residing. This area, for the TAZ zones, has currently 200 additional rooftops primarily is because we were aware of that special use permit that was approved, that could potentially be developed by 2020, but also potentially by 2035, maybe an additional 700 rooftops. Now, once again, this is just a model that they use for transportation planning. The following are the supporting comp plan policies that were cited within the staff report. It's to encourage a balance of land uses to help Post Falls remain a desirable, stable, and sustainable community, and that ordinary activities should occur within walking distance of most residences. There should be a range of housing types and price levels to be provided, and that there's adequate lands for future housing needs. Encourage off-corridor circulation and then limit the access points, and that development of commercial shopping centers should be around near arterials, intersections, and high trafficked areas. Engineering division has commented in that about this project, and that it was ran in the KMPO model, and that if the zone change was approved, that they could actually probably reduce some of the road improvement part of that right of way within both the Jacqueline and Expo Parkway. That the water, because it's close to that West Post Falls standpoint, that there's adequate capacity for fire flow, and that in regards to water reclamation, the city has the capacity to serve it. The Post Falls Police, the Kootenai County Fire, and Kootenai County have commented and has no objections to the proposal. Now, this was prior to being enlightened on that this may be pertinent or it may not be based off what was be brought forward by legal. But these are findings as 4A and 4B of before you within the staff report, and 5A and 5B. For recommendation of approval, those would be the 4A and 5A, and the 4B would be for recommendation of denial, and the text corresponding with that for each. Obviously, the Planning and Zoning Commission has moved forward 4A, finding that it is consistent and would be compatible with the existing future land uses, rather than 4B, it's not consistent and would not be compatible with the existing and future land uses. Also with 5A, which is moved forward from Planning and Zoning, is that it would not adversely impact the delivery of services by the city or other service providers, as well as the school district. And then with 5B is that there would be adverse impact by adding the new residential uses in an area that's primarily industrial and commercial. So this time, this will conclude staff report on it. Do you have any questions?
Joe.
So the Woodbridge development before that was changed to residential zoning. That was pulled from the urban renewal district. Is that correct?
I do not know that answer specifically. I don't know if
It was.
Yes, it was never included in the district.
It never was. Okay.
No.
Thank you. Probably a stupid question. I hope it's not too stupid. But the multi-family special use permits, when were those approved?
those were approved. If memory serves me correct, it was approximately around 2010. I'd have to go and pull the file, but I know it was right around that period of time.
4 or 5 years ago anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have several questions, so maybe. Alan's going to take a lot of time. Anybody else have questions before we go to him?
I can wait.
Okay, he can wait. You're on. Okay. Thanks, Alan. John, you talked about balance of land use. Can you talk a little bit about the differences of land use within CCS versus industrial? What can't be done in CCS that can be done in industrial?
In CCS, a lot of your heavier, obnoxious type industrial developments are permitted only through a special use permit in a CCS zone. Versus in an industrial zone, they'd be permitted outright. You wouldn't have to come before P&Z and propose what you're intending to develop. And then with the industrial, most of the commercial is permitted outright in that as well as the industrial.
Okay. So everything that commercial for the most part can be done in industrial. Is that correct? Or it can't?
Yes,
Okay. So commercial can be done in industrial, but not all industrial can be done in commercial.
this is true.
Okay. So just as an example, buck knives. Can it be done in industrial? Oh, well, I guess it could be because everything can pretty much be done in industrial. Could it be done in CCS?
Speculatively, without looking at the land use table, I believe that would be a special use permit in a CCS.
ALK Abeo, another company that's over in Jacqueline, manufacturing type company. Would it be permitted in CCS?
Once again, without looking at the land use table, I would believe that
Definitely would be
that would be a
okay.
special use permit.
Be okay in industrial without question.
Correct.
But they're not, I mean, you use the terminology disruptive or whatever type businesses. I wouldn't consider those in disruptive type manufacturing.
No, but a lot of times with zoning, when you permit something outright, you don't know what the effects are. So the special use permits allows, you're not saying it's not permitted, you're just saying, well,
Right.
take your proposal, propose it. It may seem like it's not going to provide a hardship. That way it's not going to be an issue, but there's a high likelihood that some of those uses may. So due to that, that's why the special use is there.
But if a company were moving to Post Falls, they would be either confronting the possibility they've got to come and ask us for permission to be in CCS, where they wouldn't necessarily have to ask us permission to be in industrial. It'd be another hoop they'd have to jump through to get approved. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So again, back to the balance. As we sit down and plan out our city for the future, we said we wanted our industrial there. Where else, do you have this larger map available? Or can
No,
you put it up there?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, where else in Post Falls is our balance of industrial? Where else can industrial be in Post Falls if it's not there?
So as far as when you look at land massing for industrial opportunities, rather than potentially market demand for that industrial development, you have currently, this right here is the old, this is the, that
84 lumber?
84 lumber, yeah, thank you. The 84 lumber site has some industrial. River Bend's all industrial. You have Montrose at this location is currently zoned industrial. Idaho Veneer, that's all zoned industrial. Yeah, currently the Expo is zoned industrial. Potlatch, it's not real clear, that's zoned industrial. And then a lot of the East Celtice Way along this corridor is zoned industrial.
Where that is currently not built, I think is what owns that. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to, I guess what I'm getting to is we want jobs in Post Falls. And when we talk about jobs, we want high-paying manufacturing type jobs. It's when we talk to Jobs Plus, it's always what they're talking about. Manufacturing jobs are what we want. We don't, when we look at the tax base, it's a burden on the tax base to have more rooftops. Rooftops takes more out from the tax than they put in. Manufacturing puts more in than they take out. Am I not correct?
That's a discussion point that I've honestly wanted to have some workshops on, and looking at what the tax-based system is based off establishing the levy rate on value, and then looking at the inputs and the contributions from both commercial and industrial, and is there the break-even point? Because some industrial has low tax values on it, and the question is do those jobs that they create, if there's not a proportionate share that's in a high enough category to purchase, well, then they're not purchasing the average home that's on the market, because most of the jobs they're providing they need two people to work in order to buy the homes that are in Post Falls. So it's looking at, I don't think it's a straight, clean answer that can be answered without more analysis.
Okay. I don't know, maybe Jason, can you add any light to that question in general?
If I may, the information that Jobs Plus shares is that for every dollar of taxes paid on the residential side, they demand $1.17 in services. And for every dollar in taxes paid by the commercial industrial, it is, and I don't have the exact, but I believe it's less than 50 cents in services that they require, which I think is the point you were trying to make.
That's the point I'm trying to make, but I was just trying to find if you agree with that, or if anybody agrees with that, or.
Yeah,
It all
I think
depends
it's-
upon the value of the industrial, and that's what John is trying, so if they have large storage lots and things that have relatively low value, then no, that's not true.
Okay.
If you're looking at a buck knives, it probably is closer to the truth. So it just depends upon the actual manufacturing.
So I guess what I was getting at there is that, the rooftops adds jobs, but they're more like temporary jobs, because once the houses are built,
That's right.
they're built. There's no more, those jobs are gone. And so you're really relying then on the CCS to support that. And if we give up all of our industrial land, then we're not much of an attraction to businesses that want to come here and do manufacturing.
yeah, and sometimes I look at, because I was actually an industrial worker. I worked in aerospace, and it was on a line. You had lunch was a half hour. So you had, from the time the bell rung to the time to get back, you had a half an hour. So, when you look at Riverbend and there is some vacancy out of Riverbend, do you need to have some commercial in nearby that can provide this lunch break services, as well as, is there enough commercial for, you have a CEO or they want to go out for the evening and have some entertainment? Is there something in the close proximity to provide that as well? And so when you look at this, how it was originally intended as being all industrial, was that a fair assessment at that point in time? Or what is that point where you can offer the correct mix of commercial, residential, and industrial, looking at the whole area? It's kind of a philosophical
Yeah.
discussion.
We'll shift gears for a second. You talked about buffer. I questioned whether, you said that landscaping wasn't necessarily a good buffer.
No, I'm saying the buffering requirement in of itself doesn't mitigate 100% the effects. So if your tree was, let's just say, 35 feet tall, you may have 50-foot tall lights at the edge of your perimeter for security reasons for your industry, or you may have a plethora of lights, like you see at Caterpillar right now on I-90, that's part of your industrial development, emitting this into the sky. That right next to a single family subdivision may not be the most conducive for that.
Well,
The buffer in of itself wouldn't.
Okay, I was confused then, because in the staff report, it said that you're using, or that you were wanting to use the R1 to be the buffer.
The buffer is more or less the transition that, to be quite honest, from a planner's perspective, the Woodbridge subdivision in of itself created a level of complexity to get a good transitioning of uses going forward. And so I think it comes into what plan takes this not so perfect situation and moves it forward, which is in the best interest for the city.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up Woodbridge. How did Woodbridge get there in the first place?
I wasn't here at the time, but from what's been told, is that it was originally denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission and recommended for approval, and then it was approved at City Council. As far as the details behind that, I don't know.
What was it zoned before it was residential?
I don't know if Bill or Rob knows what it was. It was commercial?
I guess what I'm looking at is we talk about trying to do something about Woodbridge, and it seems like we're just making the problem bigger. Probably shouldn't have put residential there in the first place. Planning and zoning said, not a good place for residential, It got approved, but I don't know that it's really a good idea to add to that mistake, or I don't know that that's a good idea. I guess I go back to the fact that if you make a plan for the city, this plan was to have it industrial out there, we should be working toward making that plan work versus tweaking the plan unless there's a really compelling reason for the benefit of the city and its citizens to make that change. Agree? Disagree?
I mean, as far as like what I stated was in the staff report, there is no community plan, like a city center plan that currently exists that looks at, it had a community, a buy-in, a public process. This is what we want this area to be, or a Highway 41 corridor plan.
Yeah.
I mean, it could behoove this area to have a similar plan that looks at this contextually, going, here's what we currently have for a built environment. How do we rectify this going forward?
Okay. When we talk about balance of land use, is there a percentage that you use where you look at a city and you say, for, percentage of the city should be houses, and a percentage should be commercial, and a percentage should be industrial, and a percentage should be land, like parkland and stuff like that? Is there a breakdown of that, and have we applied that before and after this zone change?
I've actually looked for those performance standards for other communities, like what is the proportionate share, and I think I have not been able to find anything conclusive. I think what you do is you have indicators. You have commercial vacancy rates, you have industrial vacancy rates, office vacancy rates, you have the value of your land, and is it moving, and so you just look at the indicators for your community and make decisions that work for that community. But I haven't been able to find anything definitive, because I've had the exact same question.
I won't get into the urban renewal because I think we're going to get a lot more information on that. But would you say that adding those homes there, would that have an impact on the schools? Where is the closest school to that residential area?
See, I'll go back.
Within the state of Idaho, I think Washington's actually got a school that's closer.
It's going to be the new one, Westridge.
So I believe the closest school would be out at, without being a private school, closest public school, I believe, would be the one at Montrose.
Westridge?
Westridge.
Westridge.
Do we know how much capacity it has right now?
No, and all I know is that they were informed, and there was a discussion between the applicant and the school district about potential concerns with it.
Okay. I think I'm good.
Two comments, if I may. The schools were an issue I had. I found the comment that was made earlier interesting, because if you look at the single family at 45 acres, a single family, and you assume 44 homes per acre, it's 180 homes. If you have one child, two child, and I know you may have to use averages, but that seems like a fairly large impact on any particular school. So I found that comment interesting. And Alan, I think one of the few times council disagreed with planning and zoning was on this, because you voted to deny and we voted to approve. I reluctantly voted to approve under the hope, I guess, or belief that activity would create more activity. And that was the main reason I voted for it, and it has not done that, so I was wrong. So, but again, I know P&Z
Wasn't
voted
trying
no.
to point fingers.
No, I know, but I take responsibility. I voted yes. So, Betty Ann.
How many acres again were R1 in this now?
45.
Okay, 45. How many acres were R1 when you first came to us? Wasn't the same, was
No,
it?
it wasn't. It was R2, and I believe.
It was R2.
Yeah, it was the R2, and I believe that the applicant at the time wanted and desired R2 because of that transitioning of uses, and depending on what type of development occurred along back, it would give them the flexibility to potentially modify things from a built environment standpoint as it built to the west. But they would have to answer that if that's exactly why.
Okay, Betty Ann, any more?
Yep.
Skipper Linda, you all right at this point, or? Go ahead.
I'm just going to reserve my comments until we have some sort of legal opinion on whatever it is that has been brought up. I mean, it just seems like it's kind of,
On that thing from those people.
Skip, you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Joe?
Thank you.
I'm good.
Good. Thanks, John. Appreciate you. That's probably the longest staff report. Most questions you've answered. I appreciate it. And Alan, good questions. Thank you very much.
That's fine. Sometimes with good questions, we all just learn everything from it, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Clerk, those wishing to testify. Okay. Remind anybody who does come up to speak, please give your name for the records, and we will give you 3 minutes to speak. And the first person wishing to speak is in opposition, Fred Ebel. Fred, come on up. And Fred has also attached comments that will be included in the records.
I hope this isn't all moved. My name is, excuse me, my name is Fred Ebel. I live at 1206 South Riverside Harbor in Post Falls. I am opposed to the zoning change for the following reasons. This request for zone change is inside the Expo Urban Renewal District, for which Watson is the proponent. The Expo Urban Renewal District was designed, dedicated, and agreed upon by Watson for commercial development. Taxpayers have funded the infrastructure improvements via increment financing with the hope of commercial and business development. Post Falls property owners have reimbursed Watson for over $1.7 million of infrastructure improvements. Property tax valuation in Post Falls is tilted toward residential property, a fact several of you noted in the most recent election. To rectify this imbalance, it is necessary to encourage commercial development, which is why Expo Urban Renewal District was formed. Approving this request would negate the very reason the URD was formed. This alone should justify denial of the zone change. In my mind, the only logical alternative is closing Expo URD and recouping the taxpayers' dollars already spent for infrastructure. As already noted tonight, residential developments are not tax neutral. For every dollar of tax revenue from residential development, it costs the city of Post Falls about $1.17 to provide residential services. By the way, this is from a memo written by the city about a year ago. Through property taxes, Post Falls residents have been asked to support URDs. The commitment by the Expo proponent was to bring more commerce and business growth into the community. It is impossible to rationalize how this zone change would keep your commitment to the Post Falls property owners, or for that matter, the proponent's commitment to bring commercial enterprises, which is infrastructure costs, have been reimbursed. Finally, I get off message a little bit here. Finally, the city of Post Falls property owners pay about 20% more for the same suite of services compared to our Coeur d'Alene neighbors. Perhaps a basic reason for the lack of commercial and industrial development in Post Falls is the higher tax rate. For this reason and others that cannot be packed into 3 minutes, I ask you not to approve this zone change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ebel. In favor, but not wishing to speak, Blair Walton. In favor, not wishing to speak, Paul Bielik. In favor, not wishing to speak, Jay Enos. Jay, I always say it wrong. Enos or Enos? Sorry about that. I know I typically butcher it, so I apologize. In favor and does wish to speak, Rob Elder. Rob, come on up. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Rob Elder, 9764 Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Creekside Road in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Happy holidays, Council, Mayor. It's wonderful to be in front of you speaking about this project again. A couple of quick bullet points that I just want to talk about real quickly was one, Jerry Kane. I had a great opportunity to spend some time speaking with him about this project and answering some questions about what kind of impact would a project of this size have the school district in Post Falls. I promised him I wouldn't embellish anything inappropriately, and I just kind of share. Yeah, he gave me permission to share his comments on that. Couple of things. You mentioned some math that how do they figure what the impact per houses are for subdivisions this size? He figured less than one person, one child per house is what they figure. So if you figure 186 homes at one child per house, and then you distribute those children over private school, preschool, kindergarten, mid-high, junior high, senior high, he really felt the impact in the school district was not concerning to him based on a subdivision that would come in with thousands of homes that would typically donate land, as you're aware of, to a project of that size. He wasn't concerned about that, and although it will obviously have impact in the school district, it was clear that he had felt there was no major concern of that subdivision making a burden on the school district of Post Falls. He felt it was unreasonable to ask the developer obviously to donate anything to the school district as far as land or anything for a property that was that size. He also made himself available to talk to you guys if you have any questions or concerns about the school district stuff as well. Another thing for me, the rooftop concerns. I know there's been a lot of comments about rooftop concerns. I think it's important that the project has 186 homes. There's still 150 acres of commercial and industrial property that's still going to be available on that site for that. And I think we all know during the Great Depression, things have been slow, as Gary stated, out there in the Expo project, trying to attract restaurants, retailers. The rooftops are important. I don't think it's a secret that Cabela's and Walmart's have both not been their top performing stores in their national chain levels. Since the exit has been put in, it's been a big increase in traffic to those models. There are people that are looking at sites around there, but they want to see rooftops in that marketplace. They really do. They need those rooftops to attract the restaurants, to attract the jobs, the people that can work in those facilities, in those commercial sites. I think it's a big need for that project. And lastly, I keep track of that clock. Lastly, just me personally, I mentioned this last time, I've known the Watson Group for 20 plus years. My family has known them. They are back in front of you again, making changes per your recommendations. They care about this community. They care about what they're doing out there. They're not trying to get rid of all the industrial properties. They're working diligently with making the right decisions for this community. I respect them. I think we should support this wonderful project. I have 1 second, and I appreciate your time. Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Wishing to speak in favor, is it John Hillier?
My name is John Hillier. I'm with Goodale Barbieri Company, commercial broker, and we're in favor of this rezone. I've been around this development project with regards to the point at Post Falls and the Watson development for past 8 years. The commercial environment currently would be for more retail in this area, but to accomplish that, we would need the rooftops. The industrial climate out there right now, those users are few and far between. I would think absorption in this area would be, and I've been doing development for over 25 years, it'd be 25, 30, 35 years out to be able to bring some folks in and absorb the acreage that's out there and zoned. So, for what's going on currently, and with regard to what we have done in our research, retailers want to come, but they need the rooftops. So that would kick it off, and that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hillier. Mr. Cafferty, question.
Yes,
This gentleman wishing to speak is Mr. Dittman, who's a representative of the proponent. Do we allow the proponents?
He's waving his.
Are you okay? Okay. I just didn't want to step over a line. Thank you, Drew. With that, there are no one else to testify, and we would allow the proponent 5 minutes to rebut if you have anything you care to rebut.
For the record, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering. Mr. Mayor, I want to expound a little bit on Mr. Wolf's comments in regard to the amount of industrial land currently available. And I've staff report, and I don't know which page it's on because they're not numbered, but there are approximately 675 acres of vacant land zoned industrial and heavy industrial, and 500 acres of vacant land zoned CCS currently in the city of Post Falls. I'm assuming that 675 includes the 117 acres that we're requesting for a rezone, so that leaves approximately 560 or so acres of industrial land that's currently vacant. Excuse me, currently vacant in the city of Post Falls.
I just want to conclude that, you know, the answer isn't to do nothing. The answer is, let's make some changes. Let's try to create something out there. Just leaving it industrial and let it take, you said 35 years. I think it'll take 100 years to absorb the industrial out there. So, you know, it's just going to sit. So I would encourage you to take some action and help us to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll close the public hearing. Council.
We're going to close it, or we can continue it to a later
Well,
date?
we could close it for now and continue it to another date if that's your choice. So you're right, we can. You mean I gaveled too quick?
I think so.
Well, it was a gavel for either a closure or continuance. How's that? Read between the lines, Joe. Preference?
Can I make one comment?
Absolutely.
Just to add to what Mr. Dittman mentioned, it does say in the staff report exactly what he said. It also says that there's 1,058 vacant acres of R1. So I'm not going to argue that we need rooftops. I'm just going to argue that we've got almost 1,100 acres of land zoned for rooftops.
Thank you.
Until we got more information on the bombshell before the meeting, I'm just going to withhold any comments I
Is
may
that
have.
someone want to make a motion to that effect, or what's your preference?
I would move we table this proposal until such time that legal counsel has had an opportunity to review some questions that have come up. And in the second week of, or second meeting of January, that we bring it back.
Second.
Motion second, that's good. Now, Mr. Kempke.
It would be my recommendation, as Councilmember Hissong stated, to continue it to a date certain because it's a land use matter. If you don't continue it to a date certain, you have to renotice it, and I think.
And that date certain would be, in your opinion, what will give you enough time?
Oh, you mean for me?
A second January meeting enough time for you?
Yes, that should do it, I believe.
You here?
What is that date?
You here or gone the second meeting?
20th.
I'm here.
On the second?
He's gone in the first meeting. He's gone in the first meeting.
But you're here on January 2nd?
No, I said the second meeting of
Second meeting.
January was my.
So the 20th of January, is that?
Does that work?
Yeah.
That work?
Yes. And again, I apologize. And normally, it wouldn't be an issue whether or not it's urban renewal necessarily. I mean, zone changes are zone changes, but if you have a particular designation for this property that requires in your ordinance and some other documentation, that's where this comes into play where it normally wouldn't. So again, I apologize for the public and to the council for this coming up and not being able to address that for you this evening.
Can't help it if you don't have it until such time as you arrive. We're out of line, but I will let you make a quick comment.
Okay. Neither Drew Dittman or I can be there on January 20th, and we're wondering if it can't be the first meeting in February or the first meeting in January.
First meeting in February.
February is fine with me.
Does that work?
Work for
I
you?
prefer to have full council, so I know Councilor Hissong will be gone the first meeting in January.
Right.
So if we could go.
Meeting in February.
First meeting in February?
It'll be February 3rd.
February 3rd. Is that all right with your motion and second?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Thank you.
Clerk, please take the roll.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Hissong.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you. So that was not a closure, but a continuation, correct? Thank
My
you.
understanding.
Good catch. Thank you all. Appreciate your time. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and we have none. Next is citizens' issues, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding a city-related issue that is not on the agenda. See nobody moving forward. Next item is new business, Title 6, rather, plan. Shannon Howard, Title 6 Coordinator, presenting.
Hey,
This is a different view. All local public agencies, as a condition of federal funding, are required to comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin, sex, and disability. Compliance with the American Disabilities Act is also required as a condition of federal funding. So we were made aware of this by the Idaho Department of Transportation, that we need to start to write up a plan is our first step, and that is included in your packet, and that plan is to outline how we're going to handle any discrimination, any way that the city is not going to discriminate against any of these protected classes. I have taken this plan to ITD, and they have reviewed it and they have approved it, and that is the letter saying that we're in compliance is also included in your packet. So right now what we're needing is council approval of that policy, because I did not want to bring a policy that you guys might have some changes before you. And then after that is done, we're going to start with the, what is it called? It's called the Limited English Proficiency part of the plan, which that will be providing all departments who speak with the public regularly these I Speak cards for any citizen that comes to the counter who does not speak English. They can point on the card what their language is. We are going to use the police department right now uses Language Line as their interpreter. We're going to piggyback on their service because we have pooled our departments, and as of right now, we haven't had any instances of this. But as the city grows, we are bound to have some, so we want to have the plan in place in case for the future. Then after that, we're going to, I'm going to start working with the engineering department. I have not told them this yet, but we have to start writing environmental justice summaries of all of our projects. And I have no idea why they call it environmental justice. It's kind of a weird term. But basically, we have to look to see how our projects are going to impact any of these protected classes. And with that, I have open for questions.
Any questions of Shannon? Thank you for taking care of this. It's one of those things that I know we have to and can be somewhat confusing and cumbersome, but I appreciate you taking care of it, so we provide proper service. We do need a motion to accept the plan, is that correct?
Move to approve to accept the plan Title VI policy.
second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Now that you've sat down, Shannon, could you please take roll?
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
Hassan.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Nice job, Shannon. Thank you very much. Next item, ordinances and resolution. We have a resolution dealing with the industrial revenue bonds. And, yeah, Danielle, you want to let us know why we pull that out of the consent calendar?
Mayor and Council, thank you for having me. This is a resolution to approve the action taken earlier today by the Industrial Development Corporation. You'll remember that back a couple months ago, we created this Industrial Development Corporation as a tool for the city to use to encourage manufacturing development within the city. And the preliminary project before with the Industrial Development Corporation before you tonight is with ATC Treaty Rock, which is a manufacturer of composites used in airplane manufacturing. So there's two purposes why we're back here before the council today. As I said, the Industrial Development Corporation met this afternoon, and they did two things. They held a public hearing that is required by the tax code as part of the process for issuing bonds of this type, which are called private activity bonds, or bonds that, benefit a private entity, but still have a public purpose of bringing that entity to our city and benefiting the city with the tax, increasing your tax base, as you've been discussing already tonight. The second thing that they did was approve the actual financing transaction, which is between the Industrial Development Corporation, Washington Trust Bank as the lender, and ATC Treaty Rock. The transaction is non-recourse to the city. It is wholly, and to the Industrial Development Corporation also, because they have no funds. They're really just acting as a conduit to allow the company to take advantage of these tax-exempt interest rates. So they approved that transaction. I believe you have their resolution and their report of public hearing in front of you, as well as copies of all of the negotiated financing documents. The rate was very favorable because they were able to get tax-exempt rate. It was at 2.93, which I think the company was very happy with. And so tonight, what I need you to do is a couple of things, and it's both contained in this resolution, so just a motion on the resolution would satisfy that. But the first one is you have to approve the action of the Industrial Development Corporation under Idaho Code, because you did create them, and the City Council continues to have sort of an watching role with the Industrial Development Corporation. And then the second thing is, as the governmental unit having jurisdiction over Post Falls, you have to approve the public hearing. I can tell you at the public hearing, no one spoke either in favor or in opposition to the project. The company did present a little presentation on the project, and we didn't receive any written comments either. So there is some information attached to that public hearing report about the project, probably nothing that you haven't heard before, but I can answer any questions you have. So with that, I would entertain questions or a motion to approve the resolution.
Alan?
My only question, I guess, and I think we talked about this before, is the city anywhere on the hook if the bonds don't sell?
No, they're non-recourse to the city as well as non-recourse to the Industrial Development Corporation. The only revenues pledged are the revenues that come from the company. I mean, they really don't even come to the Industrial Development Corporation. We assign them to pass through straight to Washington Trust.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Danielle. I'd entertain a motion first to, there were two stages, or will it suffice in one?
Just a motion to adopt the resolution is sufficient. Both the approvals are in there. If you look at the first, section 1 and 2 covers the two items that I just discussed.
So moved.
Motion, we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion?
Cut me
Please
off,
take the
Barry.
roll.
Malloy,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Isung,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, Danielle.
Now we do the other one, right?
Now we do the other one. I gotta get back down to it. So the next is an ordinance, it's a resolution rather on the Title VI policy.
Move to approve the resolution for the Title VI policy.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Thank you. Clerk, please take the roll.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Isung,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Danielle, thank you for your help on that. Administrative staff reports. Evergreen Cemetery fees. Mr. Fair.
Mayor, Council, actually here before you with two staff reports. The first one has to do with fee increases for Evergreen Cemetery. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. If I'm too good at that and create confusion, please stop me and ask for clarification. During our October 21st workshop regarding Evergreen Cemetery, staff was directed to look at revenues and see what it would take to bring the cemetery to make it self-supporting, so we'd be at a break-even point. And that seemed to be council consensus, so we went back and worked with finance and came forward. What we found is that for us to be self-sufficient in that, we would need to increase our revenue capacity by 35,165. That does not account for administrative costs, myself and Penny. Pardon?
Annually?
Annually. So that is what is currently being supported by the general fund and not through revenues. The administrative side, we pulled that out simply because if we weren't running the cemetery, you'd still, well, hopefully have me and Penny, but. I know. No ideas, please. I still have kids in college.
Dave, let me ask you a quick question right
yes.
there, though. Do you guys have nothing to do with the cemetery? You spend no time on it at all?
We do. If you want, that's will amount to about $15,000 more. And we've just taken that as an arbitrary number. So for us to go back in and say, I spend this amount of time and Penny spends this amount of time, we have used it for budgeting purposes. So it's probably less than that, but sometimes it adds more depending on issues. Other times it's open, so.
That's good. I just was curious,
Yep.
if there was any kind of ballpark figure around that.
Yeah. What we did recommending for fee adjustments is to adjust some of our fees, and I'll go over those in a minute, but opening and closing slightly, $50 increase. Adjusting our pass-through items from 2 times the cost to 5 times, or 2.5 times the cost, 2.5. That would be engraving, headstones, things we buy the material and then we pass it on. And then we'd also need to adjust the fees by $600, and we're recommending $300 over a 2-year period. And the reason for that lot increase in there is that when somebody buys a lot, half of it goes into the general fund and half of it goes back to our perpetual care park or cemetery capital fund, and that's by ordinance. So it's easy to, we could increase it, but we have to realize that it's being pushed off on 2 different areas. And I was afraid that that would be very difficult to read, so. Okay, that's not any better.
We've got it right in front of us.
Okay, but for the audience, lot fees, what you have there is a 2-year recommendation. If we did take staff recommendation, it would go up $300 this next year as we do a change in fees, and then the following year we do another $300. Opening and closing, $50, as I said. One thing in there that we missed this last time that we'd like to bring in would be a $50 winter surcharge. We were actually looking at that last year, and that simply covers the cost of the propane that we use and the turf we have to replace. We spend about anywhere from $35 to $45 in the winter on propane to heat the ground so we can dig the graves. And of course, when you do that, you also lose all the turf, so we can't cut it, so we replace it. So that's just a pass-through. We'd also look at some of our other charges, from the headstone locations to setting the markers and stuff going up. I believe it's $25 on that. And then, of course, the pass-through was going from 2 to 2.5 times. Other things we will continue to look at for future revenue considerations is trying to create ongoing services that bring in revenue. The challenge is you have a lot site, you sell it, that's a one-time sale. Open and close, one time. We allow 2 uses in there, so you can do a full burial in ashes, so you could get a second one in there, but it's still very limited. But there are things such as cleaning of headstones. If we go to some niches that have the glass fronts, you can change those up. So there are things that cemeteries do to create ongoing revenue. Also, the thing we'll do is we design the expansion, we'll make sure we allow for those things that will allow for additional revenue coming in. And we'll continue to follow the industry trends so that we're serving what the people want. Yes, I'm open for questions and or direction.
Questions, Dave, at this point? Alan?
I'll go first. I did a little research after our workshop on this, and one of the things that I came away with was that the niches are a much better way to go for people that own a cemetery. Do you, again, more anecdotal, I don't have statistics or anything here to share with the council, but do you know anything about that? I mean, is that a direction we'd want to go?
Yeah, and yes, it is. And Kevin is out in the audience, so if I really stray way off, he'll come and grab me and correct me. But the industry standard right now is about 70% for the cremations. So that's with your niches or your ossuaries or anything like that. This area is about 60%. So we're not quite there at the national trend, but more people are being cremated than buried right now. It's less expensive in many ways. Some people look at the use of land and everything there. So we will put in niches, and we have numerous types. We'll look at a range of niches, because I can tell you that location, like everything, is important to people. We have the ones that we put over the old water tower, and the side against the road, which isn't very pretty, no one wants them. And those will be the last ones that we sell. But we'll look at our roadways and everything. So yes, niches will become a big part of it, and that will extend the life of the cemetery too.
Okay.
The reason I bring that up in the fee part of this is that when I look at the fee increases, it almost, maybe I'm looking at this thing wrong, but it looks like we're increasing the price of the niches more than we are the land. So I mean, as a
percentage, we are.
Yeah. So I mean, I would think you'd want to almost go the other direction. Make it more expensive to buy a plot in a relation to where we are now than the niche, kind of driving the market that direction. Right now, if a person was making a decision, say, if it was they were 50-50, they'd say, well, it's probably a better deal to buy a plot than a niche.
Well,
am I off there? Have you guys, anybody else see that?
Right now, a niche, the bottom end of the niche is, in our proposal, is $950. The top end would be $1,050. On a lot, it's $1,100 and $1,500. So a lot is slightly more.
Yeah, it's more, but I mean, it's, okay. Look, roadside, going from 1,200 to 1,800, that's a 50% increase.
Correct.
Going from a bottom niche, 650 to 1,250, that's almost a 50%.
True.
47% increase. I think you'd want to go the other direction. You'd want to make the plot even more expensive. You'd want to put that at 47 or 50% higher, and the niche at the lower percentage increase.
So you're talking both a higher cost and a higher percentage increase?
Overall, to drive the market toward that one particular area that we want to go.
Right.
And then maybe redo the, I don't know. That's the way I
we
tend to look at it.
We can make adjustments like that. As we proceed and put in different niches, you're going to see a wider range of costs, because some niches are very expensive to build, and you need to recoup a percentage of that cost. And maybe that's a better thing is, as we move forward, is to look at, we want to recoup a set percentage, 1.5 times, 2 times, or whatever, because depending on the type of facing, the style, location, those all have big impacts on costs. But we can make any of those adjustments. We could make lots more and not change the niches at all, or you can have everything go up a higher rate. We're open to any suggestion.
Okay. I didn't come prepared with the solution, I'm sorry.
I was simply trying to balance it so we came to that break-even point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Skip.
I want to make sure he's done.
Done for now.
Actually, most of what I have for people that have, surprisingly, a number of people stopped me in the store, a few phone calls, but the big concern was don't sell our cemetery, which I don't know about the rest of you, but I certainly can agree with that. I'm with Alan completely on the niches. We don't have to mow them. We don't have to water them. I assume we clean them up once in a while or wash the face off or whatever. But long-term, as we look at this long-term operating expense, the niches have got to be much, much cheaper. And I agree with, we went up the same dollar amount with the niche as we did a plot. But percentage-wise, as he said, we went up 50 in one and 30% in the other one. I think we should, and I'm not saying lower the price of the niche by any means, but don't go up quite as hard and really push them. It has so many advantages, A, the maintenance, obviously, but also the life of the cemetery. I don't know how many niches you can put in the same square footage as you can a grave, but it's a lot more than two. So I would like to see us develop niches. You said there's expensive ones. Maybe there's people who want those. You know the market certainly better than we do. But hopefully we can go through with some raises and push the things that sell. I mean, we're in a business, and there's a lot of private ones that make money because they run them as a business. And I think we need to do that, and at the same time assure our citizens that 40 years from now, you will have a place to have your remains placed.
Any comments?
I agree with Skip.
Do you agree with Alan?
No.
Kind of.
Dave, does that provide you in that
Wanna
regard what
get
you need? I
into-
think the direction is, council appears to be all right with the increases, and perhaps a higher percentage increase on the lots as opposed to the niches. And if that gives you what you need, is it something you can go play with a little bit and bring back if you need to, or do we just defer that to,
We
you
can
know, the
make-
direction we want to go?
We can make those adjustments, and then when it comes back to you through a public hearing for the fee adjustments, then at that time.
Does that work? Everybody all right with that?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do I need a motion to bring back, or is just, this is John? Okay,
No.
then we will move. I don't have to do an introduction or intermission thing here, so we can go to the next one. The second part of that was an expansion plan. As we said, we've got 3 years left, 3.5 years before we're sold out. As we approach that, we wanted to make sure we laid it out as a whole, because it's expensive in the surveying and the design and everything. We wanted to make sure we could develop it in phases because we didn't have all the money up front. We did not want to interrupt any services. We have to keep that going at all times. We wanted to keep the feel of the existing cemetery. One of our signatures is the fact we do headstones. We allow headstones that are upright. It's not all flush and sterile. We also recognize that development will happen as capital monies are available, so it has to be done in phases. Our recommendation is we do it in 3 sections. I'll show you a map of that in a minute. The first section would be opened up in 3 years. The second section would be opened up in 5 to 10 years. The final section, open in 20 to 25, that could be 35, 45, depends on the market. We will set aside areas for niches so that we can bring those in as we have money. We are recommending that the maintenance building be relocated to the south near the water tower. In that land changes in the topo, we accommodate those through terracing, and instead of just putting in walls to terrace it, we're going to make sure that those are one-sided niche. At least we get back some of the value because, yes, there's more money in it that way. And I think you can make the aesthetic picture, but we have, the reason why we want it level, I guess twofold, is one, it speeds up our maintenance as far as the mowing and the setting of stones so that they can be set flat, but also we want to make sure it's safe. And we find that a lot of people, if it's uneven, you have tripping hazards and everything else, and as you have an older population using the cemetery as services and stuff, it becomes a big issue. So that's part of the design. This is right in here. These are 3 sections. There's 5 rows in each, second and third. This is where we would propose putting the cemetery shop. The existing cemetery shop is here. Close-up of that, so it gives you an idea. If you take the topo, you can see off that existing, the building's going off into the road. It's extending out that way. Utility lines go down here. So we're impacting 7 sites. Also, we're going to have to push this forward slightly to accommodate Spokane Street. So that will be overlapping into that one even more. So Additional recommendations, we're going to have to reduce the roadside size on the far east side of it. We're going to go into a one-way flow for that because either the cemetery's not straight or the Spokane Street's not straight, or maybe a little bit of both, but they kind of hit each other on the southern side. Reducing the road size, we've already pushed in to go down 6 feet less than the existing part. People turn it tight. Sometimes driving isn't as good. We're going to have to put in corner blocks of some type or posts to protect the headstones and the markers and everything. Once again, niches, memorial walls, we'll be looking at that. And ossuary pipes and or ossuary vaults will play a very big part. Cremations are becoming a larger factor, and we're recognizing that. We'd like to add a garden space, and part of that we'll cover with niches and ossuary, but I'll get into that in a minute. And then we will extend the veterans section where the existing maintenance shed is, so we'll have another section for that. Opportunities come with that. We are looking at, with that garden area, water feature in there. We'll bring some of these things back later, but we're considering even possibility of a pet cemetery to the south of the proposed maintenance shop near the tennis courts there. There's a lot of people asking about that all the time, probably as much as a dog park. We're looking at possibility of naming rights for like a 10-year period for a fee on those corner markers and having it done so it's very nice, very dignified, but that would give us some money to do some of those capital improvements. We're also considering a baby section for some areas, playing around a little bit with family plots. That's actually not as popular as it used to be, but if we had some and you have a high enough price, it can be used to fund things. You know, the statues and artwork, increasing lot sales, it comes back to location again. And so not everything has to have a set. It is. And then we may, to accommodate some of the crunching in there, we may have to modify our rules on headstones and have some areas that are just flat so we can get in and actually service graves. Right now, our estimated cost for it, for development, the base cost is $157,000 and some change there. Relocating the shop is $147,000. Lighting the flag pavilion is between $3,000 and $5,000. A garden area is estimated at $25,000. You know, the curving, $750,000. Corner protections, $18,000. Niches, as you can see, there's a wide range from size to looks and everything.
Dave, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
When you say niches, 20 to 75,000, how many niches can we get for 20,000?
Oh.
Obviously, that's not one.
Help me, Kevin.
You're about 286 niches. You're going to run right around probably 14,000.
Okay.
Right around in there. So you're probably talking at least, depending on the material that you build it out of, base that it needs to be, you could go anywhere between 300 niches to probably 800, depending on the material.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a cost-effective thing.
It is. The one thing we found with the veterans, you talk about not a lot of maintenance, well, there actually is more, and part of it I think is because we did not do a good enough base. So we've learned from that. We have to really compact it and get it thick enough and really set there so we don't have that settling, because there's nothing worse than having a piece of it settle and then all those rock faces or the stone faces don't quite fit right and they start to crack. And so that's where we look at some of that cost. The ossuary, same thing. Fence along Spokane Street right now is about $75,000 if we continue the same design. Metal's not cheap. The base cost, it includes the tree removal and stump clearing, putting irrigation in section 1, the main line across all 3 sections for our water, and gravel on the roadways, seeding it, and the survey costs. By having a real set standard block system like that, we cut down our survey costs heavily. Niches, of course, as I've already told you, what impacts that. Projected expenditures, The first 3 years, 339,000, and revenue available is 340,000, so we'll be running pretty tight there, but we need to get it up and running. The next 3 years, 146,000, and we should have 176,000 in revenue. We may have more coming in, but we felt that was a real conservative estimate on the revenue. And you can see what happens the next few years. Garden area. If I can get there. This is the existing maintenance shop here. This is the veteran section flag pavilion. So we're looking at this block in here. It's about 60 by 60 space in there. So we're proposing it. We have been talking to Gary Slidemiller about the possibility of a memorial fountain put in there, a very nice one. Having that as the centerpiece for it, working with a landscape architect to design a formal garden. But it would also include areas for people to go, and pray, for them to put some niches in, low niches, not the tall ones. So those are a little less obtrusive, but they would be niche spaces. The ossuary spots, a lot of pry tubes. That's where you have a the tubes are where people put the ashes. So instead of scattering them all over, they're put into a tube. They're not retrievable. And then there's vaults that are put in where they're just put into storage. So all those things have a play in it, but that would be for the garden area, niches or ashes only, I guess is the best description. The loss of those lots, as you guys have pointed out earlier, we can get more off of cremations. So that's how it would be made up. And some of those would or could have a higher value than other areas. Current site, just going to go over that quickly. Right now it's 180 by 80. This will show it a little bit better, gives you an idea. That's red is the footprint of it. And if we laid out one of those rows in there, that's how it covers. So it uses up quite a bit of space in there. If we did a single building footprint of the desired building square footage that staff would like to have, that's what it would look like there. If we move the current buildings in, that's how they would look. If we did a hybrid, which is our recommendation, it'd probably go in one of these configurations, but that will be brought back in once we have it determined.
Skip.
Yes, sir.
Dave, we can't move farther adjacent to the parking lot? Or to the
Down
south?
further? We can. What we tried to do was come off of where the existing road would be along the fence line and then put in parking. So we didn't want to make a giant parking lot, but we can do some adjustments in there.
I'm just thinking the farther we move it south, the more lots that are available to the north, or is that incorrect?
We felt that, well, I won't go back up to it, but in that line, if we went across there, we could have, we're far enough away from the water tower and the pump site that we just felt there was no interference.
Okay.
Also
what
looked
are
at
the restrictions? How far away from that tower do we have to be?
It's actually the pump house, and it's 100 feet in currently.
Okay.
So once again, those things can change. We have no control over the future in that sense. That's why we had to move our drain field at Camille Park when we had to redo it so far, because we ran out of space. This is the area we're talking about for a pet cemetery. So we could move some things down and shift it, but we're just looking at what was the most efficient use of space. And we're also, I should point out too, the reason why we put it up there is our utilities have to come from Spokane Street in here. So if we went there, we have the depth, we've already calculated that out, we'd have to probably push it back in there. So we can calculate that, but that will be, before we finalize the exact location, it'll come back to council. So I guess for what I need from council is if you support the proposed layout, that's the 3 sections set the way it is. If you support the moving of the shop operations to that area to the east of the water tower? And then finally, do you support us working on a garden area and then working with Mr. Seidmiller for that donation and the design? Probably in 3 parts, or I don't know.
I support all three.
I support all three. It's perfect, looks perfect.
I support all three.
Good.
We got 3 I supports and 3 thumbs up from 2 people, so yeah. we're in favor. Thank you very much.
Shelley, on my evaluation, can you remember I actually had all the council supporting the whole thing?
I did, but we're going over the definition of succinct, that's all.
For me, it's very succinct.
And I didn't get to vote. No, I support it too. Thank you, Dave. Council comments?
I'll comment on that just a little bit, because in my research, I mean, when we talked about this before, I wanted to get out of the cemetery business, and personally, I want to get out of the cemetery business, but what I found out is most cities are in the cemetery business, and for good reason, I guess, so just wanted to.
I'm
so
surprised
that's why
how
I'm
many
more
people,
supportive
that
of
was their comment.
What's that?
Don't sell our cemetery.
Yeah.
And
That's right. I would never.
I was
vote for
surprised.
that.
Small cities, big cities, they all have one.
yeah.
Good. Any other council comments? Thanks, Alan. Mayor comment, I want to publicly thank Mayor Larkin for his continued perseverance on locating a veterans home in the area. I was unable to attend the meeting last night. I think several of you folks did. But I know that a lot of the success we've had to get to this point is due to the diligence of Mayor Larkin, Len Crosby, and a few others. And I thank everybody who showed up to support, and hopefully we'll continue to work to secure the location for a veterans home and help provide service to and care for those who provided service to us. So again, Clay, thank you very much. Appreciate all you've done and continue to do. With that, we do need an executive session.
How long?
15 minutes.
It doesn't matter.
Move to enter into
He said it
executive
doesn't matter.
session pursuant to Idaho Code 67-23451A to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent. And further, that no action will be taken during this session, and the session will last approximately 15 minutes.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Clerk, please take the roll.
Wolf,
Yes.
Malloy,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Hissong,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Thank you. Enter executive session. Call the meeting back to order. Is there any motion to come forward?
Adjourn.
To adjourn.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.
Meeting adjourned.
Merry Christmas.
Christmas, everybody.
I'll be thanking you guys next meeting.